this video up by recalling an anecdote. It was early 2000s and I was the blacksmith for the Georgia Renaissance Festival. I had been performing in the midday heat. I had gone 3 shows beyond when I needed to pee. So by the end of the 3rd show, it was backing up into my eyeballs. Normally after a show, I hang around and answer a lot of questions, but not this time. I made a beeline for the privies. Now, in this desperate run, about midway, I was intercepted by a young woman who I can only describe as a beer keg and an emerald green corset. And she had the most desperate look in her eyes. She put a hand fully on my chest and she said in an exasperated voice, "Do you know me?" And I said, "Ma'am, you'll have to forgive me. I meet several hundred people, every day." She says, No. She says, "Do you know me?" And at this point in my mind, the alarm bells are going off and I'm going, I hope that she does not mean biblically. Because I'm racking my brain trying to think if I have ever met this woman. And before I can say anything else, she says, "I saw you and I knew we were married in another life." So at this point, I try to casually glance to the left and to the right, trying to see the hidden camera or the friends that have put this lady up to it to embarrass me in front of everybody, and I am seeing none. The only thing worse than figuring out that you're in a setup with your friends is figuring out that you're not in a setup and it's real life. I have no doubt in my mind that this young lady believed every word that she told me, even when she went to describing our children from the next life. And when her current boyfriend walked up, he was none too pleased with the situation. What an uncomfortable deal. The point of this is that belief in a particular thing has really no bearing on its veracity. And that's why the word for the day is epistemology. Epistemology is the study of figuring out how you know what you know. How do you verify the things that you believe in as a blacksmith? And this is something that I believe that all blacksmiths that are getting started need to have a lot of, because there's a lot of terrible information out there. It should come as no surprise to everyone watching this video that my particular philosophy about stupidity and ignorance is that it should be met on the battlefield with a 105 millimeter. When you are learning about this craft, do not think because somebody doesn't know anything about the subject that that's going to prevent them from saying something about it. And you as a beginner, that is just an incredible task to sort through people who know what they're talking about, people who have no clue what they're talking about, and everything in the middle. So a concept I want you to think about is understanding that just because somebody might be a liar doesn't necessarily mean they're the only ones you have to worry about. Let's say a good man tells you X is true. He honestly believes it. Does it make it true? Not necessarily. But there's an easy difference. If a liar tells you X is true and you put him on a lie detector test, you can clearly see that the good man's telling the truth and the liar is not. But there's not just 2 options. If the good man says X is true, he could be mistaken. He could have gotten bad information. So can you trust what the good man says? Maybe. And can you trust what the liar said? Probably not, but first you have to figure out that he's lying. And that's awfully hard to do over the internet. But there's a couple of other options that are involved here. Not only can the good man be mistaken, some people could just be plain nuts. Think about this. As a stage performer, people that are in the acting thing, tend to be very good at spotting deception because it's kind of what we do. As a performer, if you're acting or you're persuading a crowd, it has an inherent type of deception that's associated with it. So we're good at it, right? The problem is that when somebody that's just plain nuts comes along and says, "Hey, did you know that I am Napoleon?" They're not lying. They believe it, which is, I've had to learn this the hard way, sails them right past any deception radar you might have. So the question becomes, when you're online, you can't read somebody's facial expressions. How in God's name do you sort through what's good information from what's bad information? And here's the trick. 1, it's simply not easy. 2, you can help yourself by making sure and going to trusted sources. If you go to somebody's website, somebody that's taken the time to do something about blacksmithing, there's a good chance that they've got good information. If you go buy a book, like you should whenever you start a new educational endeavor, that's going to help well. That means that somebody took the time to write a book. Even if they were terrible, they went through a lot of effort to get it done, and there's a good chance they've got good information. However, if you go to a Facebook forum and say, hey, what's the answer to this? Why in God's name would you do that? Now, if you're in a professional forum, you're hoping that one person out of the 100 they're going to answer are going to have the answer that you want. But the problem is, how do you know what that is? I cannot stress enough. If you want to hear a course of opinions, that's fine. But if you want good information, the first place that you start is going to be a book. The second place is going to be a trusted source. And at the third end of it, you're going to have to learn how to test things for yourself. Just because somebody says it doesn't necessarily make it true. And if you cannot get online and find anything resembling a scientific paper that explains it, there's a good chance it's a lot of crap. You guys have seen me time and time again zero in on somebody that said something about the magnetic north fallacy. For those of you that have been living under a rock, the particular fallacy was the fact that you would actually, if you want to make sure that your knife doesn't bend, that you have to quench in line with magnetic north because the magnetic field bends the blade. That is horse poo. And I have come down hard on a lot of people. And for those of you that have seen these interactions, it always works out the same way. I ask them to simply, with the power of the internet, provide any paper on physics or anybody from the metallurgical industry that does it for a living that says, hey, this is true. They never do. They insult me and they say this is no longer worth my time, and they go away. Every time. Folks, we live in the information age, but surprisingly, we don't know how to handle all that information. Our little monkey brains just can't deal with it. So folks, it is critical that if you're going to do as much good blacksmithing as you can, if you're going to retain as much good information as you can, you've got to start throttling your sources. You've got to look for where the good information is and stay away from the forums. That's all I got to say. You guys be good.